This is CBC Saturday News.
Good evening, I'm Marivelle Tarouk. In one rural Ottawa community, the past 3 years have been a barrage of bad news. In 2017, Dunrobin was hit with what they thought would be the flood of the century. In 2018, they were devastated by a tornado. And now this, river levels that have set new records in the capital. The CBC's Omar Debagi Pacheco got a first-hand look at what awaits homeowners now.
Homes like these are gone. Others only standing thanks to luck, relentless work, and an army of volunteers.
There's such a sense, there's this overwhelming sense of doom when you stand out there alone, and then to have people walk up your driveway and say, "Can I help?" It just lifts the burden from your shoulders.
David McKay hasn't had much sleep.
The water was up on the patio door, maybe 30 centimeters.
That started to change late this week.
I could feel my shoulders coming down, and so it's starting to just breathe again.
But the battle against water coming in is not over yet.
When the pump stopped, the water was at the top of the filter, and now it's come up about 8 inches since we've been talking.
Out goes the water, in comes the next challenge, the cleanup.
Right now, I'm nervous. I have to wait until June to see if everything has been dried up.
If there's a silver lining to this round of destruction, it's this. Even though the flooding along the Ottawa River set new records, residents say they felt better prepared.
Having done this flood in 2017, we knew roughly where the water was going, and we knew which houses were to start targeting as our high-risk ones, simply because we've done it once before. We hope to never do it again.
This is our wall.
Chantal Couture-Campbell and her family are new additions to the Dunrobin community. They just bought this house. They moved in as the floodwaters were rising.
Lots of tears, lots of not eating, not sleeping. Hard to see your family going through that as well, and wondering, well, where are we going to live if we can't move in? Because obviously you can't put a moving truck through a disaster zone.
This retired resident says he's wary of climate change disasters seemingly getting worse and more frequent.
Some of these solutions are not going to be cheap, and I'm retired, so does that mean I have to go back to work?
The city is asking its volunteer force of about 15,000 people to rest up because in the coming days, they're going to need their help to clear out what is more than 1.5 million sandbags that have been used to protect the homes in the city. Omar Debagi Pacheco, CBC News, Ottawa.
Flooded residents in a Montreal suburb are preparing for a class action lawsuit against the Quebec government. A natural dike protecting Sainte-Marthe-sur-Lac breached last week, flooding thousands of homes. People forced to flee say the province knew it posed a risk and should have fixed it well before it gave way. Meanwhile, Montreal's fire chief says there is tremendous pressure on other dikes in the city as well. Water levels are not expected to recede this weekend. And next week, heavy rain is in the forecast. To date, more than 7,000 homes have been flooded. The island remains under a state of emergency.
We've been through a heck of a ride over the last couple of weeks. I'm happy to say that it's getting a little bit better.
In Muskoka, there is hope that the worst of that crisis has passed. River and lake levels are stabilizing. And on the north branch of the Muskoka River, it's actively receding. Now, the daunting task of recovery is becoming more clear. In Toronto, as the water level in Lake Ontario rises, so does the anxiety. Some residents on the island have begun preparing sandbags.
Right now, we're starting to see puddles in the low spots on the island where there's grass and they're starting to fill up with water.
We're preparing some sandbags in anticipation of the water rising some more. We're hoping that we don't have a problem, but we figured it's better to be prepared than not.
Conservation Agency is saying the water levels are expected to rise at least another 14 centimeters next week. The lake is already sitting at almost half a meter above average for this time of year, but it has yet to beat the May 2017 record. The agency says many factors are to blame, including outflows from Lake Erie and local rainfall. They are warning residents near the shore to secure or remove items that are at risk from floodwaters. And Sophia, we remember all too well what it looked like in 2017 there. So any rain in the forecast to worry about?
Well, we're just a hair shy away from those 2017 levels. And in the short range forecast, there is a bit of rain. It will be light. We will talk about that. Long range forecast, though, as we talked about that a little later in the show, there will be some soaking rains as an active and cooler pattern will set back up as well. But short term, I think some positivity can come. So you know that water levels will stay high all over for at least a week or two, but things are receding, especially in the Ottawa region. Some parts of the Ottawa River are still rising, but not in Ottawa itself. We're watching still some lakes rise in cottage country, Lake Joseph, Lake Rousseau. But the situation generally is improving, and an absolutely gloriously warm spring day on Sunday will certainly help the situation a little bit there as well. And I got to mention, we're especially watching for around midweek around the Toronto Island area as far as erosion and water levels go. But when you talk about almost 20-degree warmth, it will do a number for actually warming things up and drying things out a little bit. Sunday and Monday, great days in southern Ontario, cottage country, the Ottawa region, and in Quebec as well, where you need it the most. Now, that rain that we talked about, it comes in late day Monday. It is very light and very scattered. It's more just a nuisance type story. Not good for anybody considering the flooding situation, though, of course. And then when we talk long range, we're going to talk about the cool down and the rain to come. I will give you your forecast for the Toronto Marathon, and we'll talk a little bit about how maybe this spring hasn't been as gloomy as we all really think it has been.
All right, we all need some optimism. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Sophia. Well, the battle between Brampton and Mississauga came under a sharp spotlight today as Mississauga continues its quest to leave Peel Region. Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown held a town hall for residents, and that's where our Kelda Yoon is. So Kelda, Brown made his position very clear.
Mayor Brown has repeatedly said that he is against the breaking up of Peel Region, which includes Brampton, Mississauga, and Caledon. And the town hall took place here at 3 this afternoon. Besides Brown, several city councillors were also present. As for the 50 or so Brampton residents that came out, they were mainly trying to figure out what this would all mean for them. Now, Brown has said that there are basically 3 options: dissolving Peel Region and for Brampton, Caledon, and Mississauga to become standalone cities. Second option, merging the 3 municipalities into a mega city, or to leave the current structure unchanged. Now, the town hall included a recent report by Deloitte that concluded keeping the region as it is would be the cheapest option for taxpayers across Peel, while dissolving the region would be the most costly. And when Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie put forth her motion, she argued that while being part of a region makes sense for cities that would otherwise not have the financial capacity to fund their own services, Mississauga does. As she also said, Mississauga currently transfers $85 million of taxpayers' money to pay for the growth of Caledon and Brampton. She says that money should be spent on Mississauga priorities. As she also added that it isn't fair her city is providing 60% of the funding to Peel, but has only 50% of the vote at the regional council. Brown, meanwhile, says Crombie's numbers are from over 15 years ago and that the Deloitte report shows they are no longer accurate.
It would be an additional $1 billion, the cost for residents across the region. And I just don't think there's an appetite right now for skyrocketing tax increases.
Despite the report, Mayor Crombie has said that she stands by her stance that Mississauga should leave Peel Region and become a standalone municipality. Now, there is another report that is currently being done by Ernst & Young. Those numbers are still pending. Meanwhile, for many of those that were here today that decided to speak up, they say that they don't really like change and that they would like Brampton to remain a part of Peel Region.
I think we should stay together and just continue building on what we've got.
We should tough it out or stick together.
We should remain as we are right now and improve our services.
I would like to stay the way we are because I think it works, and I think it works very well.
Now, Mayor Brown is hoping this kind of public input will make a difference. The province is currently reviewing regional governance across Ontario. There is an online poll that Brown is encouraging residents to take part in. It will be on the City of Brampton website until May 13th. Meanwhile, ultimately, it is up to the Premier, Doug Ford, to decide whether Peel Region remain as one. That decision is expected this August. Marivelle?
All right, and much more to discuss between now and then. Thank you, Kelda. Police have identified the man killed in a suspicious incident near Steeles and Islington yesterday. 2 men were found inside a commercial building on Millwick Drive on Friday morning. Police said they responded to a call for a shooting and found 32-year-old Justin Kyle Izard with signs of trauma. He later died at the scene. The second man was treated for minor injuries. The incident is now considered a homicide. Police are asking anyone with information to come forward. An autopsy is underway in the case of a fatal shooting during an after-prom party in Stouffville. The incident happened early yesterday at an Airbnb mansion on Bloomington Road East, where a male was shot to death in the house. The victim's name and age have not been released. 2 teens have been charged and appeared in court yesterday. They were found a few kilometers away in possession of a handgun. Police have not confirmed if the 2 incidents are connected. They are expected to provide an update on Monday. Well, there's been growing concern over Airbnbs in Toronto. Critics argue the short-term rentals are eating up a big chunk of the city's real estate supply. Now, city councillors want to bring in new rules. Other cities like Vancouver and Montreal have already implemented their own regulations. But how effective have they been? And how do they compare to what Toronto wants? Our Farah Morelli takes a look.
Let's start with what Toronto defines as short-term. It's basically anything that's rented out for less than 28 days at a time. City Council wants to restrict short-term rentals to primary residences, meaning you could only list the home that you live in on sites like Airbnb and not other properties that you might own. In terms of enforcement, it would be an honor system. The city would investigate complaints with fines of up to $100,000. So how does that compare to other cities? Let's start with Vancouver.
Like Toronto, short-term rentals are only allowed in your primary residence. If a host breaks these rules, they could be fined $1,000. Since the rules came into effect, the city of Vancouver has seen about a 40% drop in listings on sites like Airbnb.
So when our regulations went live last September, Airbnb removed almost 2,500 listings.
Montreal is where things get a little different. There are both city and provincial regulations. They actually allow short-term rentals in a secondary property. If you're doing it on a, quote, regular basis, you need to get a certificate from a provincial body. But what does regular basis really mean?
Even
Quebec's own tourism minister acknowledged there's a lack of clarity. And so far, the province hasn't issued a single violation ticket, just warnings. The city, too, brought in its own rules restricting short-term rentals to certain neighborhoods. But a CBC investigation found between 700 and 800 listings in areas that are banned.
I don't think there is a single place that has really solved this problem.
This expert says until Airbnb starts sharing data about hosts with cities, no one will get it right.
There are a whole bunch of good ideas we have about what effective regulations would look like, but they all basically hinge on, can cities or provinces or whoever get the data about Airbnb hosts in order to effectively enforce them.
Toronto's short-term regulations are currently being appealed. Their fate hangs on a hearing scheduled for August. But it could be months after that any regulations actually come into effect if the appeal is thrown out. If it isn't, city officials say it's back to the drawing board. Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
Muslims around the world are preparing for Ramadan. The most important month in the Islamic calendar begins tomorrow night. Those who observe will not eat or drink anything from sunrise to sunset, and many will attend mosques for night prayers. In light of recent attacks on places of worship around the world, our Haweya Fidel spoke with leaders in Toronto's Muslim community about their safety concerns during this month.
Item by item,
hundreds of volunteers in Scarborough filled up bags with food for families in need. The bags will be distributed to food banks across the GTA as part of Project Ramadan.
This coming Monday, the month of Ramadan, the month of fasting will start for Muslims. These baskets go not only to Muslims but to the larger community.
But as the community prepares for their holy month, memories of recent events targeting places of worship are still fresh. Back in March, 50 people were killed after 2 mosques were attacked during Friday prayer in New Zealand. Then in Sri Lanka last month, targeted suicide bombings killed more than 200 people on Easter Sunday. And just 1 week ago, 1 person was killed after a gunman opened fire in a San Diego synagogue on the last day of Passover.
There's no place on earth that is safe.
Omar Farouk is with Toronto's International Muslim Organization.
By having so many people coming to the place of worship, especially during the month of Ramadan, we have to look out for each other.
That's why his mosque is applying for a federal grant to improve security. The grant supports communities with a history of being targeted by hate crimes. If approved, Farouk plans to install HD security cameras in strategic locations.
We're hoping that it will be an act of deterrent to others, and also it will instill a sense of confidence in the people who are coming here.
Still, while some are concerned about security, others say for them, Toronto remains a safe haven.
Sometimes I might be concerned going places alone at night, maybe, but I don't think it's something that, okay, I don't want to do a big gathering with family.
For the majority, for Canadians, for my neighbors in this community, in this city, I feel like everyone is really embracing and understanding.
Ramadan will begin May 6th. Hawaii Fidel, CBC News, Toronto.
A thunderstorm, a river, and a Boeing 737. All the ingredients in one terrifying ordeal for some passengers. We'll take you to Jacksonville, Florida after the break. Investigators may soon have a clearer idea why a Boeing jet skidded off a rain-soaked runway in Florida and slid into the river. The flight data recorder has been recovered. Today, experts from the NTSB got their first good look at what they're calling a runway overrun. The plane, carrying 143 people, came to a stop in shallow water last night. Some waited anxiously on the wing in the darkness for rescue crews to arrive. No one was seriously hurt, but 21 people were taken to hospital with bumps and bruises. It's believed 3 people are dead after an overnight explosion at a silicone plant in Illinois. It happened late Friday night. 1 body has been recovered. 2 people remain missing, and officials say it's unlikely they survived. They also say it may be days before the site is safe enough to resume the search. Violence escalated today along the border between Israel and Gaza, with rockets being fired into Israel and Israel conducting airstrikes on Gaza City. Palestinian officials say at least 3 people were killed today, 20 were wounded. Israel began the strikes yesterday after a border incident left 2 of its soldiers wounded. Many of the rockets fired into Israel have been intercepted, but at least 2 people have been wounded, 1 seriously. The White House says it's monitoring the situation on the Korean Peninsula after North Korea fired what are being called unidentified projectiles into the Sea of Japan. If it's confirmed they were ballistic missiles, it would be the first time since November 2017 that Pyongyang has fired such weapons. And many analysts believe leader Kim Jong-un is expressing his frustration at stalled talks with the U.S.
This test was most likely just a gesture to let the Americans know that North Korea is still there and they're interested in moving forward.
Talks in February between Kim and U.S. President Donald Trump ended with no agreement. Pyongyang wants economic sanctions lifted, but Washington says not before North Korea gives up its nuclear arsenal. Since then, there has been no progress on a disarmament agreement.
It's an amazing day out here.
It's already legal, so why are they still marching? We put the question to some of these cannabis advocates at the Marijuana March in Toronto. Their answers after the break. Originally a protest against prohibition, the city saw its first global marijuana march since legalization, and advocates and supporters came out all the same.
Just coming out, learning from people, talking to people who are interested in this.
I'm here because Ontario didn't implement legalization correctly. Other provinces got it right on day one.
Even though it's legal, there is still stigma that needs to be undone. We're not talking about that, and I think that that's a reason to protest and something that the government needs to pay attention to.
The march has been running for more than 2 decades. A heads up if you're heading out tomorrow. The Toronto Marathon is set to take over a number of city streets starting at 6 in the morning. It begins at Yonge and Shepherd and will initially shut down nearby streets north of that intersection. The race will then turn back south, eventually traveling east towards the Don River, and then come back west across the downtown to Humber Bay Park East. And you're looking live at the Toronto Harbour Front. We could be headed for a lovely day tomorrow. So let's check in with Sophia for those details. And Sophia, those marathoners going to be particularly interested in Sunday's forecast.
Mother Nature will cooperate this time for all the feet pounding the pavement, feeling about 5 degrees, really light winds, which means it'll be nice for those running. We also might have some of that fog and drizzle that we had this morning to wake up with, but hey, the clouds are starting to clear, that boundary is sinking to our south. We even got into a little bit of the sunshine today, which is nice. Clouds will move back in for the overnight and boom, Sunday, beautiful day. Spring at its finest. You might even have the chance to be close to 20, and for sure, many of you around southern Ontario could see 20 and above on Monday. Guelph, Kitchener-Waterloo, Hamilton, London maybe will be a little cooler near the lake shores. And then rain moves in. It's scattered showers at best though, folks, so not a huge thing to write home to mom about. And it'll come late day Monday for us in the GTA, so really we eke out a pretty nice day Monday. The showers scattered will stick around maybe till Tuesday morning, and then after that, with this cold front, cooler temperatures move back in for a couple days, and then that active pattern resumes late week before Mother's Day weekend. We could have the potential of more soaking rains, but we dry out for Mother's Day weekend. But all in all, it actually hasn't been so bad. Last April, if we're looking back to 2018, we actually had more rain, more snow. We actually had quite a bit of snow, and we had more days that were colder, below 10 degrees. So many gloomy minds out there have been saying they've never seen a spring this bad. Well, really, this April, not too shabby, and there's room to grow because we actually had more than 20 days above 20 degrees last May. So here's hoping we follow suit this year.
And thanks for that perspective, Sophia.
You're welcome.
And that's our show for you tonight. But before we go, we want to leave you with some more spring cheer. It is Cherry Blossom Weekend in High Park. If you're down there, going to head there, it is a car-free this week. Thank you for watching. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website, cbcnews.ca. Have a great night, everyone.